Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Off the Dome podcast. It is season 3, episode 12, and we have a guest, our first guest of the season. Some of you guys might know him, might remember him from last year, or have just seen his beautiful face on TikTok before. It's CallMeCrafty. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. How you doing, man?
I'm amazing. I'm very excited that I've got a guest on. I've been saying for weeks and weeks, I'm like, all right, next week I'll have a guest on. Essentially lying to everyone who's listening to this and watching this, but the lies have stopped. I have my guest.
Not a
So
lie
yeah,
anymore. I'm here.
it's not a lie. It's just been a crazy week in the NBA since I recorded my last podcast. There's been crazy James Harden's name has been in the news. There's been some Russell Westbrook news. The Lakers are trying to trade everybody. Ben Simmons as well. His name's been going around. We've got a lot of trade talk to get into. The All-Star voting's coming up. We're going to talk about borderline All-Stars and the Eastern Conference race. I don't know if you guys have been noticing this. Crafty, you as well. I just kind of realized this today. There's the top 6 teams are separated by 2.5 games. It is insane. What are your thoughts on that so far?
Well, I knew it was close because the Eastern Conference right now is just stacked with talent that we didn't think they would get after the Eastern Conference was one of the worst conferences in the league forever. And then, of course, right when LeBron moves is when everyone else moves away. Not a LeBron fan, just throwing that out there. But there's a couple things I want to note. Right now, the Heat are number 1. I don't think anyone expected the Heat to be good again. You know, we all were calling their ring, or the ring they didn't get, but the finals appearance, the Mickey Mouse ring or whatever. Yeah. And then last year they just didn't really show up. They lost to the Pacers, if I'm not mistaken, in the first round.
Bucks, yeah, the
Bucks they lost to the Bucks.
4, yeah.
They lost in the first round, and we were like, oh shoot, we don't know if they're going to be good again. And right now they are leading the Eastern Conference. Now I do want to talk about where everyone is listed, but I also want to talk about where I think in 2 weeks everyone's going to be. Because I think in 2 weeks, this list is going to look so.
It definitely will. And we're going to get into that. I've got all the injuries, too, 'cause that's another big thing. A lot of these teams have missing players. You mentioned the Miami Heat. They're without, Kyle Lowry's been iffy. I forget Victor Oladipo is on this team. He's been out all season long, but he's been on this team. And he's not going to be playing this year, but just imagine if Victor Oladipo was there. And teams like the Bulls, the Nets, who are not far behind, the Cavaliers as well, who are doing better than I think anybody expected. They're the biggest surprise this year for me. Those 3 teams that I just mentioned have had some pretty serious injuries. Obviously, Lonzo Ball, Alex Caruso, for the Bulls, the Nets, the Kevin Durant situation, and the Cleveland Cavaliers. Jared Allen's day to day. Larry Markkanen's missing 2 weeks, and Ricky Rubio and Colin Sexton are both out for the season. It's been tough for them.
Absolutely. And as a Cavs season ticket holder, not a Cavs fan, want to get that out there for anyone who doesn't know me. I'm not a Cavs fan. I do live in Ohio. I just happen to have season tickets because they saw one of my TikToks and offered me a discount. I do have season tickets, but I am not a Cavs fan. But even then, I'm like, dude, this is the perfect year for me to get tickets because it looks like they might make the playoffs for the first time since I believe it's like in the 90s without LeBron James on their roster, which is quite insane.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy because they have what I would consider 2 borderline all-stars. I know we said we're going to talk about it later. They might have 3 depending on how you look at it. But like Evan Mobley, been playing out of his mind. I'm a big Scotty Barnes guy. He's my favorite rookie, but I think Evan Mobley right now is the front runner for rookie of the year, 100%. Jared Allen looks like he's coming back as one of the best shot blockers in the league, even though his stats don't really reflect that. If you watch the way that man runs the rim, you don't shoot a shot around Jared Allen. It's just kind of a thing. And Darius Garland is playing out of his mind. We didn't even think his potential was that when he got drafted, but he's averaging nearly 20 points a game right now. The Cavs are easily the biggest surprise of the year. They kind of feel, for me, they feel like the 2015 Hawks. There's not a superstar on that team, but you could see them making a run possibly.
Yeah, I think 2015 Hawks is a little bit. I see what you're saying there, and the fact is not really a superstar, but I think that the 2015 Hawks are more kind of like the Utah Jazz of last year, where they win a lot more games in the regular season. And also, you can laugh at them when they lose because you're not really cheering for them because it's the fucking Hawks and the Utah Jazz. You know what I mean? I think the Cavaliers we all want to see win. I I think even fans of teams like the Heat and Bulls would love to see the Cavs take those teams to 7 games, because that'd be a very entertaining series. And they're hard to cheer against. And I've got a emotional connection to the Cavs this year because Darius Garland is on my fantasy team, and so was Jared Allen. But I got a funny Jared Allen story. I drafted Jared Allen in fantasy, and then I dropped him in the first 2 weeks because he wasn't doing too much, and I picked up Montrezl Harrell. Shouldn't have done that. I fucked that up for sure. But I'm still doing pretty good this year though. But Jared Allen, yeah, I love Jared Allen. We're going to talk about him a bit more when we get into borderline All-Stars, I'm sure. And finally, I just want to get your thoughts on the Philadelphia 76ers, because this is a team that they might have the MVP this year in Joel Embiid. The MVP, that could be a podcast discussion of its own, because there are like 10 guys in the MVP race this year, which possibly the greatest MVP race of all time. Like, genuinely speaking, normally there's 2 or 3 guys. There's 10. I mean, there's literally almost double-digit MVP contenders. What are your thoughts on Philadelphia this year?
Oh, on Philadelphia, dude, that team right now, I think I don't want to say they're not my favorites in the East. My favorites in the East are the Bucks still, because I think Giannis is going to take that team to the finals again. They're playing just like they did last year, but better. But the 76ers specifically, Joel Embiid is playing out of his damn mind. He's averaging 34, 10, and 4 over the last 10 games, and he's showing no signs of stopping. And a big thing that they keep talking about on like Sports Center and all the shows is, are the 76ers wasting Joel Embiid's prime by not trading Ben Simmons yet? And I think they are, because we're looking at this man. This man is an MVP caliber player when he plays. Highlight when he plays. He's out for about 20 games each season. We expect that out of him. But even with him being out 20 games this season, if he keeps putting up stats like he has been in the last couple of weeks, I don't care if he missed 20 games. That's the MVP. He's playing out of his mind. And I don't know if we've ever seen, besides maybe a Hakeem Olajuwon, a more skilled center in the NBA.
Genuinely speaking, I think that it's a very fair point. It's funny you say the more skilled center in the NBA. The fact that you're saying that now, when we have another guy like Nikola Jokic in the league, who also has he can be in that discussion where you're talking of straight up skill. Obviously, he doesn't have the defensive skill that those two guys had, but as far as offense goes, footwork goes, and just the smarts of basketball, their post moves. The fact we've got both Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic playing in the same league right now, both in their primes, both MVP candidates. You could argue that they're the top 2 with Giannis Antetokounmpo. We're genuinely blessed to watch them play every night, because I don't think people quite realize Jokic and Joel Embiid, they are almost bringing back the center position. They're bringing back the big man position, because there was a long stretch of history there where it kind of felt like it was a small forward and point guard kind of game. And now we had a center win MVP last year, and we might have another one winning this year with Joel Embiid.
I believe the last center before Jokic to win MVP was Shaq, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think it was.
I mean, unless you want to count KG as a center when he won it, but still, like that's an insane stat. Just because the center position used to be the most dominant throughout, from the 60s to almost the 90s. I would say that if it isn't the center being the most dominant, they're the second most dominant position that there is. And then we went through, like you were saying, that era of just like the center is probably the least important position. But now we're seeing people like Nikola Jokic lead the Nuggets to the record that they shouldn't even have right now, because they're missing MPJ and Jamal Murray. And we're watching Joel Embiid lead the Sixers to the 6th seed without what we thought could have been their best player in Ben Simmons. Put the air quotes around that. So I mean, honestly, like you were saying, that's very impressive that we get to see both of these players. And I think that's something when we're talking to our kids and grandkids and we're the old heads, like, you didn't see that Joel Embiid gameplay. Like, that's one of the guys we're going to keep bringing up next to LeBron, KD. Those are the kind of guys we're going to bring up, is Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic.
That's an interesting thing too. Is this next kind of stage in NBA history as the LeBrons of the world kind of start fading out. Even though LeBron is not fading, the man is putting up like 30 points per game right now. But as Father Time most likely will catch up to him. I'm not going to put it past the fact that this man might not be human, because he just doesn't look human. But as these new kind of guys start coming up, who is going to be the people that we're telling our kids and grandkids about? for me, I'm gonna be telling stories about Nikola Jokic all day long because that's my guy. I got a crush on Nikola Jokic for sure, and I think there's nothing really wrong with that. Let's move in. Yeah, we're gonna talk more about the Brooklyn Nets. By the way, we didn't really touch on them then. We're gonna talk about the Brooklyn Nets and the LA Lakers toward the end of the show, because those are two teams that coming into the year we were kind of, I think they were the two teams that we all kind of or were pretty favorited to get out of their respective conferences and meet in the NBA Finals. A lot's changed since then, and I think a lot of opinions have changed since then. So we're going to be talking about those teams more in depth in a few minutes here. But first, let's move over to the All-Star selections, more specifically borderline All-Stars. I don't like to kind of beating the dead horse of who's your all-star starting five, who do you have on your bench, because I think at this point the starting five for the most part is going to be pretty similar. Depending on who you ask, it's going to be pretty much the same 4 or 5 guys in there. I want to talk about borderline all-stars. I've got a few of them here. I'm sure you have a few of them there. I'm sure that a lot of them are pretty similar. Who is your first borderline all-star that could maybe make the NBA, the All-Star game? They're kind of guys that, if a player gets injured, they'll kind of replace, or maybe could sneak in the All-Star game.
Absolutely. So I know who you want to talk about. I won't say that person, even though they are on my list.
Thank you.
I know who your boy is. I got 2 guys written down. The first one I'll talk about, and then I'll let you discuss who you have written down, is Fred VanVleet. Fred VanVleet this year, Brian Windhorst on the Hoop Collective podcast called him the epitome of the All-Star. Now, do I agree with that? No. But the fact that there's people making statements about a Toronto Raptor when they're really not doing that great this year, calling them the epitome of an All-Star, that's pretty big, and that speaks volumes for who Fred VanVleet has been this year. He's averaging 21, 5, and 7, and he had pop-off games where he showed potentials of possibly being a multiple-time All-Star who just had a late peak. He's 27 years old, which usually is not when we see people start making their first All-Star games. Usually it's like 24, 25. He's doing it at 27. I don't know if he will make the All-Star game. I know he's had my votes a couple times, but we saw him pop off this year for a 37-point triple-double. We saw him pop off for a game where he had 27 points and 12 dimes and 3 steals to add on to that. Honestly, I just think Fred VanVleet, I could see him as one of the bottom guys on the reserve. I don't think he's a starter. I don't think he's I don't think he's going to make the All-Star game. But this is borderline All-Stars we're talking about, and I think one of the first guys we got to talk about is Fred VanVleet.
That's completely fair. And the fact that he's 27 years old and he's only a year older than the guy I'm about to mention makes it feel kind of weird. But Fred VanVleet, I think he is an All-Star this year. At least a few weeks ago, I said I think he was an All-Star. I haven't really been paying attention to what he's been doing recently, but I think the thing with the All-Star game is that it almost when we think of voting in All-Stars, I think we almost do it more like we're voting for the MVP. We kind of factor in team record a little bit too much, I think. You know what I mean? But as much as team record matters, I think for the All-Star game, it shouldn't really matter as much. Like, I want to see the players who are just balling out of their minds more. Like, I think Domantas Sabonis should deserve it more than a guy like Chris Paul this year. You know what I mean? Chris Paul's putting up, the stats are there. He's really good in assists, and his team is the best team in the NBA by a wide margin. But Domantas Sabonis is doing some great things in Indiana, and his team has got a pretty shitty record. Fred VanVleet, they're terrible. Fred VanVleet, I think, deserves it. I think Fred VanVleet should be an All-Star this year, and depending on his competition, really, guys like borderline All-Stars, it kind of comes down to more their competition rather than how they're playing. So I think Fred VanVleet, it's a good show for sure. I want to go to my guy, and the fact that Fred VanVleet, I just said this, is only a year older than DeJounte Murray. As a Spurs fan, it's tough just to stomach that one, because Murray's always been this young guy, and he's always been the guy who's up next in the NBA. He's not. I wouldn't consider him one of the league's best young players anymore. I just consider him one of the league's best players. And DeJounte Murray is he is. I think he's a top 6 point guard probably in the NBA, top 7.
Okay, that's fair. I just think we would throw that title around a little differently. When I say that, I'm talking players. Top 10 guys, and just in general. Whenever I use that, there's just a difference of how you use that title.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a top 10 player in the NBA. He's been playing like a top 10 player the last few weeks, though. I'll put that there. He's putting up like 27, 10, and 10 in the last few weeks. But I think the definition borderline All-Star, when you look it up in the dictionary, should have a picture of DeJounte Murray's face this season because he is exactly that. His numbers are insane. He's putting up 19.5 points per game, I think, right now, 9.2 assists per game, and just under 9 rebounds per game, 2 steals per game, leading the NBA in that category. And he's only gotten better over the last few weeks, putting up, like I just mentioned, 27, 9, and 10, something like that, with, of course, one of the best defenses a guard could. He's one of the best defending guards in the NBA. DeJounte, and you were going to talk about him too, so I don't want to take too much of your time, but DeJounte Murray for me. He's a borderline all-star.
I mean, I feel like you covered all bases on who DeJounte Murray is. The only thing that I would add, I mean, you already mentioned his steals, but just in general, he's a defensive monster. He's lengthy as all hell. He's not Kevin Durant, but he's got like the Kevin Durant kind of length for his height, man. Very lengthy guy. He's got great energy, and he's just a solid player that can do quite literally everything at a comparable level. Like there's not too many things that he's like the best at, but he's just good at everything.
That's completely fair. He's a good jack of all trades kind of guy. And as he gets older, I kind of want to see him get traded away because you said that the 76ers might be wasting Joel Embiid's prime. I think the Spurs are wasting DeJounte Murray's prime. I think he would be much better suited somewhere else. I don't really know where. I haven't put too much thought to that. Don't really want to put too much thought to that. But there have been rumors, and we might get into this a bit later and talk about the transfer rumors, that the Spurs might want to move on from him because, let's be real, his value as it is at an all-time high right now. And the Spurs are a team that's rebuilding. DeJounte Murray is not. He doesn't want to be rebuilding. He should be in a team, in a place, competing in the playoffs on a nightly basis.
100%. And I agree. The thing is with the Spurs, too, is I think they just refuse to admit that they're ready to rebuild. They still have one of the greatest coaches of all time in Greg Popovich, but so many young guys that by the time they can become a contender again, Greg Popovich isn't going to be able to coach that team anymore. Right. I think that they need to move on from him. I know it might hurt you as a Spurs fan.
I would understand, honestly.
But we're looking at guys like DeJounte Murray, who even now you can't really consider him such a young guy because he's not pushing 30, but he kind of is. But then they got young guys like Lonnie Walker and Josh Primo that these guys, they got to either put them through the rebuilding process or, I don't know, make a huge trade with DeJounte Murray because, like you said, his value's at an all-time high, and God forbid that he be a Pascal Siakam and tank his value next year, or a Ben Simmons and tank his value.
Right. All right, let's each go with one more each here for borderline all-stars. Who's your next borderline all-star?
All right, I hope I don't take another one of yours. I feel like this guy should be without saying. I'll go real quick over him just because there's not much you can say because I feel like it's kind of obvious. I'm not following the hype train, but LaMelo Ball. He's averaging 19, 7, and 7 with over a steal a game. If we put those stats in to NBA history, 19, 7, and 7, and 1.5 steals. He is the only player at 20 years old to ever do that. If we lower the standard to just 1 steal a game rather than 1.5 steals, the only other player is LeBron James. Enough said. I'm not saying he's a young LeBron, but this year, LaMelo Ball has basically been carrying the Hornets. They're not a bad team without him. But their chemistry this year, I feel like, has a lot to do with LaMelo Ball in the way that he plays the game, in the way that he facilitates as a point guard. So I don't really have much to say about LaMelo Ball. I just know that if there's someone, especially in the All-Star game, what you want to see is flashy, that's LaMelo Ball. That's all he's ever been, is just a flashy playmaker. And I think with those stats and the way that he's trying to carry the Hornets to a playoff berth, I think it's possible that we could see him make the All-Star game, also just because he's one of the players that all the 8-year-olds know, and they might know how to vote. Yeah,
I think that LaMelo Ball for sure is. I mean, the Charlotte Hornets are a playoff team right now. They've got a winning record. They're above 500 by I think 3 or 4 games. They're comfortably above 500. And we just kind of mentioned DeJounte Murray. LaMelo Ball's stats are very similar to DeJounte Murray's. Same kind of thing where you can just kind of do everything. You know, he's a lankier kind of point guard, good on defense, and he's a good playmaker as well. I think LaMelo Ball for sure, borderline all-star. My last one is Jarrett Allen, and I think Jarrett Allen, out of all these guys, has the best chance of making the All-Star game, just because the other people at his position, he's not going up against the most competition as far as front court in the Eastern Conference goes. There's not a lot of depth there above Jarrett Allen off the top of my head that I'm thinking of, but I think he should be one of the reserves, probably a lower down reserve, just with the way that he's been playing. And I would pick him above Darius Garland for the All-Star game this year.
Okay, that's respectable. I had Jared Allen and Darius Garland's names written down, but then I also put a note that says, "Don't mention these guys because you have cap season tickets, so you see them play live, so you get to experience the atmosphere, which is completely different."
Right, yeah. Oh, and it's in. Are you going to the All-Star game? Because it's in Cleveland, isn't it? Yeah.
Dude, I wish. So, you would think as a season ticket holder and someone who works for ESPN, I feel like I had two chances to get into the All Star game this year. I thought I had two chances, and neither of them worked out. They sent me a discount. They were like, you can get kind of cheaper tickets in the nosebleeds, and I was like, I'm not paying that kind of price to get in. Plus, I work the day of the All Star game, so if you see any YouTube ESPN coverage on the All Star game, it's me. Hi.
Just for the the listeners out there, what are you said they could? They said that ESPN or Cleveland could get you a discount in the nosebleeds. What were the prices of the discount? Like, what would you have been paying? Are you allowed to say?
It's a season ticket holder thing, so yes, I can, because what are they going to do? Revoke my season tickets? I mean, it's the Cavs; they need me. So the tickets would have been $500 for the most up you can get, and like that's a decent price, especially because the Cavs stadium is not that tall, so the viewing experience would not be that bad. But I sit in quite nice seats the rest of the year, and if I'm going to watch the All Star game, I want to be there. I want to be there, and I want to be down on the floor level as down low as I can get. But 500
Right.
bucks, man, dude, no, I can't pay 500 bucks to. I live 3 hours from Cleveland. I already drive up there almost every other weekend to watch a game.
Yeah.
So it's already too much. At $500, I'm a season ticket holder. I think that I should just get first dibs on some of the free tickets that I'm sure they give out.
Yeah, I think that if we gotta honor the season ticket holders of the team, that's kind of part of what makes it so special of having that in your city. I don't know. I think they're kind of doing you dirty there. $500 for and when you say the most up, that's like the highest up in the nosebleeds, backs against the wall kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Just make sure when you clip this, you definitely clickbait it, and you're like, the Cavs are screwing their fans.
Oh, for sure. I got you. Don't worry about that. Cleveland Cavaliers, worst organization in the league. They hate their fans.
I'll let you know if they revoke my season tickets.
All right, let's move on to some transfer rumors. This is a weird week in the trades because there was a bunch of names being thrown around, some very high-profile names. Nothing seems really too definite. I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on a few of them. James Harden, if he leaves Brooklyn, where do you see him going? Could you see him in Philadelphia? Because that's a place where if he was to leave Brooklyn, like I guess I could stomach it, seeing him in Philadelphia with Joel Embiid, but I'm not really sure. What are your thoughts on the James Harden situation?
Okay, so the reports have come out that James Harden wants new scenery. Can you blame him? Honestly, he's frustrated with Kyrie Irving not getting vaccinated and only playing road games. He's frustrated with that. KD's out. They're relying on him to be the offensive weapon that he's just not anymore. Sorry, James Harden, you're not scoring 50 a game anymore. Thank God, that ruined the league. Um, but James Harden wants new scenery, but I don't see him getting traded. I don't think a trade is going to happen for him because the only person on the 76ers they would trade for James Harden and expect is Ben Simmons. And let's be
Yeah.
honest, the 76ers are pretty unrealistic with what Ben Simmons is actually worth. I mean, this is the team that asked for Andrew Wiggins, James Wiseman, and 2 first-round picks in one draft and then 2 more in another draft. I don't see him getting traded, although I do wish they would get Ben Simmons out of there in Philadelphia. But I do think Philadelphia is the place that he will land if he is to leave the Brooklyn Nets. I think he'll leave in free agency if they don't win a ring. If they win a ring, he stays. If they don't, he doesn't. And I do think Philadelphia is the only spot I could see him going, just because if you look at when he went to Brooklyn and when he did all that stuff in Houston, basically to get out of playing in Houston, which is crazy. The only team that was like, besides the Nets, was like Philly. It was Philly or the Nets. There was no other options. And James Harden had also, at least a report that I saw, I don't know how true it is, it was on Twitter, so it could be completely fake, says that he doesn't even like living in Brooklyn. So I think Philly would be a good change of scenery for him. I've never heard anyone be like mad that they live in Philly. Very historic city, very beautiful city. I will be visiting it here next month, which is going to be great. I think Philly is the only place that would make sense for James Harden because he wants to go somewhere where he can contend. And we're not going to see him on the Lakers. That's just not going to happen. he's not. He wouldn't stoop to that level, but I do see him stooping to a Philadelphia level of going to team up with Joel Embiid.
The other thing with the 76ers is that Daryl Morey is there, his old general manager back in Houston. Now he's in Philadelphia. Yeah, and I think that was one of the biggest reasons why Philadelphia was in the conversation a year ago. I guess it would have been, when he's only been in Brooklyn for a calendar year, which is weird. Like when these players get traded in the moment, it feels so weird that they're that they've been traded. It was so weird seeing James Harden in Brooklyn, and now it seems like he's been there forever. And to no avail, because and we'll talk about the Brooklyn Nets a bit later. I feel like this is kind of their last chance to get it right with the big three that they have right now. The Ben Simmons situation, we just kind of touched on it there. DeJounte Murray, as a Spurs fan, I feel like I have to sort of drag you into this conversation because it's my podcast, so like whatever. DeJounte Murray there were rumors that the Spurs are looking to possibly trade him in the summer. Do you think this is a smart move? What do you think the Spurs can get from it? Maybe possible trade destinations for DeJounte Murray. Go.
You see, that's a tough one because DeJounte Murray, like you said, is a tall, lengthy point guard that can do pretty much anything you ask him to. Maybe not to the world's best ability, but he can do it.
Yeah.
And he is still technically young. He's basically what most people consider your average middle prime.
26 years old, yeah.
Right, and he's putting up numbers that are they're quite nice. Now, as far as places I could see him go, I don't know if I can see him in another rebuilding process. So I want to rule out Indiana there. Indiana is one team that I think is in the trade. The trade deadline is just going to go absolutely fucking nuts. They're going to go for any and everybody they can get. But as far as, I don't know, I could see the Kings. Let me explain why. Not just because I have a Kings jersey on, but I could see them trading. I could see them trading for Buddy Hield in a pick. I don't question me here. This is a totally spur of the moment. I wrote down notes. You didn't throw DeJounte at me, but I could see Buddy Hield in a pick because the Kings want so badly just to make the playoffs one time. Man, it's been 16 years, I believe. They just want to make it one time, and I think DeJounte Murray. Now that I got it in my mind, I think DeJounte Murray and De'Aaron Fox would be a lethal matchup. Now, Buddy Hield's not young. Maybe they could go for someone like a Marvin Bagley for the Spurs, which I wouldn't wish on you either as a Luka fan. The fact that man was picked before him.
You're right, yeah.
But I don't know. I feel like that could be a really solid trade destination because the Kings have assets. And even after they would go pick up like a DeJounte Murray, they got people like Marvin Bagley, they got people like Buddy Hield. Buddy Hield almost went to the Lakers. The Lakers almost wanted him when they were building their Toon Squad, as I called it. Obviously the reference to the Space Jam movie.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm going to say off of a whim right now, I think that we could see a Halliburton, De'Aaron Fox, and DeJounte Murray lineup. Because DeJounte, he could play the three. If you ask him to, he can play that three.
That would be very scary. I think for Murray, I'm thinking more of a team that needs a point guard more. Like I'd want to, as a DeJounte Murray fan, I'd want to see him in a bigger market than Sacramento because I love Patty Mills. When Patty Mills went to Brooklyn, he got all his media attention, he got all his hype, and he was on national TV every single night. He still is. I want to see DeJounte Murray like that. I think the NBA fans out there are being robbed of one of the league's best point guards in DeJounte Murray. And I think that, it's funny because I'm talking to someone who's working for ESPN, but shit, ESPN, they got to start posting this guy a little bit more, and that's going to happen if he ends up... Yes, I'm blaming the entire ESPN posting on you. It is completely your fault that he's not on there more. I hate the Lakers, but I'd want to see him on the Lakers. I know logistically, how would it work? As a Spurs fan, I don't want anybody on the Lakers. Genuinely, if you were to trade me Russell Westbrook right now, I would just. The words do not express how much hatred I would have for the Spurs front office to trade DeJounte Murray for Russell Westbrook. Get the fuck out of here. But I would love to see DeJounte on the Lakers or, a big market team Even like Chicago would be really fun, but they've obviously got Lonzo Ball in there. But maybe they can make some trades with Chicago. I don't know. I kind of I sort of did throw that out there because I was just sort of reminded as we were doing this podcast that DeJounte Murray might leave the Spurs this summer. Wanted to get your thoughts on that. All right, and finally here on the Off the Dome podcast today, I mentioned this a bit earlier. The Los Angeles Lakers and the Brooklyn Nets. What are their chances at a championship at this point in the year? Because at the start of the year, those are kind of the two teams that had picked, or a lot of people had picked those teams coming out of the Eastern and Western Conference. This point in the year, the Lakers have a losing record, and the Brooklyn Nets are a complete shit show kind of thing. They've got great talent, second in the East, but it's just like Kevin Durant's been hurt, James Harden wants out, Kyrie Irving. What is happening with him? Where do you give these two teams? What kind of chance do you give these two teams at a championship?
Okay, simply put, for the Lakers, 0.
No chance.
Russ and Bron simply don't fit together. I'm sorry to say it. They don't. LeBron performs well with either a pass first point guard or a pass second score first point guard, but still passes the ball. Okay, I'm not saying Russ is a ball hog yet, but Russ is a pass, get stolen from, let them score, get the ball back, go for it, and shoot off the backboard first type of player. He doesn't fit well. He turns the ball over simply too much to be LeBron James's point guard. You could possibly put the man on the bench. I think that's sadly right now, that's the best spot for him. I would rather have Taylor Horton Tucker start for the Lakers right now. Not because I think he's better than LeBron, because Taylor Horton Tucker himself has also shown to be very underwhelming this year. But Westbrook doesn't fit with LeBron at all. Anthony Davis comes back the night we're recording this. Maybe he can change this up, but I don't see Anthony Davis taking this team from an 8 seed that's under 500 to a championship roster. Unless they win in the buyout market this year, I think they're completely screwed to maybe even make the playoffs.
For me, because I don't like the Lakers and I'm somewhat of a pessimist, I'll always give the Lakers a chance at a championship. I'm always, because I can't stand the team, but that's why I think they've got a chance. Just because it's me. That I'm the reason why. You know what I mean? I think Anthony Davis, before he got hurt, he was terrible. Like, for Anthony Davis standards, we're like, what are you doing? You were supposed to take the reins from LeBron James this year. AD was the one that was supposed to be giving us 30 a night, not the 37-year-old LeBron James, who is supposed to be regressing by now. He's not doing that. He's having the best offensive season of his career since like 2010, like literally since he was in Cleveland the first time. He's just insane this year. It's crazy. The Russell Westbrook, I think it's time that the Lakers give Russell Westbrook the Carmelo Anthony treatment that I think was the OKC Thunder that sat Carmelo Anthony on the bench back in 2017, 2018, or they wanted to do that. And I think that maybe that's what's best, because they've been doing that to Russell Westbrook a lot down the stretching games. They haven't been winning those games. They have lost a lot of them, but they're still sitting him on the bench. I think that the Lakers' problems stem a little bit. They stem a bit further than just Russell Westbrook. He's almost been being used as a scapegoat. Now he's definitely got his problems, and I had no idea why the Lakers ever traded for him. I couldn't believe it when it happened. I'm like, why are you doing that? But and I guess now it's sort of evident that they shouldn't have done that. But I'll give the Lakers a out of 10 chance at a championship. For some reference, I think the teams like the Milwaukee Bucks are probably at like a 5 out of 10 for a championship. I'd probably give the Lakers maybe like a 1.2, pretty close to 0, pretty close to what you had them there. How about the Brooklyn Nets though?
No, the Nets. I didn't think we'd actually be saying this, especially after last year where they missed their chance at the championship because Kevin Durant is 0.5 too big of a shoe. But I think the Nets can make the championship, even despite KD being out, because KD will be coming back either right before the playoffs or in the middle of the first round, depending on where that 6 to 8 weeks lands him. And we saw him come back from an Achilles tear, averaging 27 points a game. Okay, I don't believe that this man has recovery time. I believe he steps on the court and thinks basketball and doesn't even think the injuries are possible to him, even though they happen to him quite often.
Yeah.
Now, even with KD out, they still have James Harden, who, even though he's not playing like James Harden, he's still putting up 22 and 10. That's pretty solid. You can argue he deserves more foul calls. Sorry, Steve Nash, I don't agree with you. But not to mention the Lamarcus Aldridge. They still have him, which a lot of people forgot about because he just kind of showed back up out of nowhere after retiring. I don't even.
He is also 10th in the front court in All-Star voting, which I can't. But like you said, I feel like he shouldn't have. I thought he was done, but he's not only playing, but people are noticing the fact that he's playing and are voting for him in the All-Star game.
Absolutely. And as a Spurs fan, I'm sure you understand the Lamarcus Aldridge hype. When he's back, we got to vote for him for the All-Star. Now, I didn't. I forgot the man was back until he dropped 27 the other night. Yeah. But that's a different story. It showed up and I was like, oh my God, this guy, I forgot he came back. But with the possibility of James Harden playing the way he has, KD coming back, Lamarcus Aldridge is putting up 13 a game right now, which isn't normal for a man who just had heart problems.
Right, yeah.
And with the possibility of the Nets paying Kyrie Irving, paying the city of Brooklyn or the borough, I'm not sure how that would work considering it's still New York City, paying $600,000 in fines for Kyrie to play home games in the playoffs, which they do have the option to do. I could see them being a threat to the Bucks, who are my favorite. I don't know if they have it. I don't know if I'm calling them the favorites. Like I said, I'm still choosing the Bucks. But like how you rated it on a scale of 1 to 10, I give the Bucks a 6. I would give the Nets a 5. I don't think that they're that far off. And you can't count out KD unless it's his shoe size. I don't think he can count him out.
Can't. Would you say so? I guess, or is Brooklyn your second pick to make it out of the East? Are they?
Yeah, I wish I could say it was the Cavs, just because I want to go to a Cavs game.
That'd be very exciting. Yeah. Brooklyn. Fuck, I had a really good point. Oh, the Kyrie Irving thing. That's one of the greatest mysteries for me this year is that Kyrie Irving's not allowed to play in Brooklyn because of COVID. Unless you pay the fine, then it's okay because
COVID doesn't exist if you pay money. That's what it sounds like.
Clearly does not exist. That's just how it goes. It's fantastic piece of technology that they have there. But listen, I think Brooklyn. I kind of want to pick they're such a weird team to predict because it's a Kevin Durant situation. I think KD's, despite the fact that he's injured right now, and like you said, he doesn't really have recovery time. The fact that KD's injured, but he's still the person that I'm the most confident about on this team that also has Kyrie Irving and James Harden is very, very weird because I feel like Kyrie and James Harden are the kind of players who just might not show up in the playoffs. I don't know. I got a weird feeling about them. And I think that's why I'd honestly take the Chicago Bulls or maybe even the Miami Heat against the Brooklyn Nets in a 7-game series right now, which a month ago, I definitely wouldn't have done that. A month ago, I would have thought the Brooklyn Nets were going to go all the way to the NBA Finals. But even if this team is fully healthy, I have a tough time seeing them coming out of the East. I give them maybe maybe a 4 out of 10 chance of making the NBA Finals. If Milwaukee if Milwaukee's a 6, I would give Brooklyn a 4. Because I don't know, they're just I don't really trust them as much as I trusted them before. I think Patty Mills is gonna have to step up a lot. As a Spurs fan, it's nice seeing that. I don't know how many times
right
this podcast as a Spurs fan, but it's nice to see Patty Mills step up, and it's nice to see Lamarcus Aldridge get some recognition because Lamarcus Aldridge, he's top 10 in the Eastern Conference front court in fan voting, which I cannot I can't fathom that. Who are these people voting for a fossil of a human being who has been forever one of the most underappreciated players in the NBA? Now he's getting votes for the All-Star game. It makes no sense to me.
Beats me. In 2015, we tried to get Zaza Pachulia at the All-Star game. So
they vetoed that too, I think, because he had the most votes at one point in the Western Conference.
And they changed the voting rules the year after because they were like, we can't that's one thing I got to disagree with as a fan of the NBA. We got to be able to choose the All-Star game. I think they should make it 100% fan vote. I don't care. Have another game that is based off of skill and ability. I want to see Taco in the All-Star game. I want to see an Alex Caruso in the All-Star game. I want to see the players that I want to see. I hardly ever vote for the guys that deserve it most. I didn't vote for LeBron once this year. He's definitely should be the captain. I didn't vote for him though.
The thing is
There's
I don't
plenty of
vote.
people doing it.
Yeah, I don't vote for LeBron or Curry, guys like that, because I know that they're gonna get like millions and millions of votes. You know what I mean? That my one vote where I decide, oh, instead of Steph Curry, I'll vote for, I don't know, maybe DeJounte Murray this time. Try to get him in there. Right? Like, that's not gonna make that much of an impact. I know Steph Curry's better, but I'm not gonna vote for him. But I love how you brought up the Zaza Pachulia thing, because if you're a real NBA fan, if you remember voting for Zaza Pachulia in the 2015, I think it was.
Oh, I definitely did it.
That was, and like they literally like they vetoed that thing. They vetoed it quicker than they vetoed Chris Paul going to the Lakers back in 2000.
Oh gosh, that's another whole
They
can
made
of
sure
beans.
that did not happen. Anyway, Crafty, that's about all the time we have. You have a podcast if you just want to plug that real quick, because I think you are a thrill to listen to, and maybe the people listening and watching to this would also want to hear your show.
Well, first off, appreciate the compliment. Just warmed up my heart at 10:15. Appreciate that. So my podcast is called The Crafty Cast. You can find it wherever you listen to podcasts, whether that's Spotify, Apple, or if you're a person who likes to watch a podcast, whether you're watching this one or you just want to watch or see what I look like, you can find The Crafty Cast on YouTube. If you just look up Crafty Cast, it'll show up there. And you can see my beautiful face as you described it earlier.
Absolutely. It genuinely is. Anyway, yeah. Anything else you want to talk about? I know that, my life, I've been chilling recently. I started to watch The Bachelor. It's a great show. I love it. It's amazing. And also there's a new Ice Age movie coming out, which I'm very excited for, because
there is.
Buck Wild is possibly the greatest character ever on Disney Plus.
So gosh, yeah. as far as you know anything, I don't even really know. I just been wanting to watch the Twilight movies randomly. Like last night, I tried to find it on Netflix, but Peacock took it over because Peacock's trying to become the next Netflix.
123movies.com, my friend. In Canada, at least, that's the shit right there. It's pretty much Netflix. Lots of ads, but it's whatever. You know me, I'm feeling good, living better. Drake once said that. Crafty, thank you very much for hopping on this podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening, watching. I'll see y'all next time. Peace out.